Hi, Misha here, and this is an experiment. I think I might have figured out a way to do this. Something that I've talked about doing from the advent of this personal channel, talking about music. Unfortunately, that's not really possible unless you put in some music clips. And in my position, not being able to see, that's always eluded me. I can't just easily trim, do this, do that. But I think by lots of kind of end workarounds and kind of majiggering the system, I figured out a way. And so I wanted to talk about one of my favorite musicians, artists, vocalists of all time, and explain why. The title of the video might be slightly misleading, but not by much. The only ones I would rank higher, maybe David Bowie. And anyone who knows me in person, Smashing Pumpkins, 9 Inch Nails, probably not higher, but up there. Yeah, and of course mood has a lot to do with it too. There's times when Pink Floyd hits exactly right. Hell, there's times when Bob Seger hits really right. So, with no further ado, we're going to talk about Gary Webb, or rather, Gary Numan. Let's dive in. This gentleman will be 65 this year. He was born in 1958 as Gary Webb, yes. And started making music very, very early in his life. And I'm going to be honest, when I was younger, I was very much into music and buying albums. But I had a policy that really never left me. I never got too much into the artists' lives. Unfortunately, a lot of musicians have pretty rocky lives, and that would often kind of color my view of them. And I wanted just to appreciate their music for what it was. So very, in small doses, very reluctantly have I looked into people's lives. And I have to be honest, Gary Numan's is one of the few that doesn't disappoint me. He is someone that I find very inspirational, and I'm glad to know about, frankly. So yeah, he started off, he was born, of course, in England. We're not going to go into that too much here. But I will say that he started playing guitar when he was a teenager, and actually released his first album 1978, 1979, under the Two Way Army name, which was his band name. So their debut album was essentially Two Way Army. This name would stick for the first couple albums, but by the time of, I think it was Pleasure Principle, he was releasing under his own name. And while he never stopped playing guitar entirely, what he's really known for, well, two things. His very interesting voice and his synthetics, his machines. He was an early pioneer, not quite as early as Kraftwerk, but you know, right in there with like Depeche Mode, which is another band I really like. But anyway, that band achieved very quick success, especially in the UK, with a number of songs. And back then, albums got released very frequently. In the first couple of years, already by 1980, they were on album 3 or 4. And these weren't short little albums either. And as we'll see, Gary Numan's a workaholic. I respect that a lot. So I was looking through, Our Friends Electric is probably their first big hit. But I think early on, this is probably my favorite track. So let me know how me trying to inject a clip of music in is. I guess if I get copyright struck, it won't matter because it'll hopefully go to Gary Numan. So I'd be cool with that. Either way, it's a small channel. Experimenting over here. But anyway, yeah, Down in the Park is just a really interesting song. It also shows another similarity, kind of with our taste. He was, and still is, very much into sci-fi, and dystopian futures and that kind of thing. It's maybe a little covered up by the more poppy sound, electric sound, but even then, if you listen to the lyrics early on, it's a little on the dark side, even here and now. So yeah, they did very well. Pleasure Principle came out. Replicas, I think that was 1980, did well, and by 82 quickly rocketing to success, and more good songs came out. Just kind of picking at random, because the dude's made nearly 24 studio albums, not to mention compilations and remixes and lives. Yeah, but here's another one. Why not? So yeah, things were going very well for Numan and his band, although, it was kind of solo project, much like Bowie and a lot of other really high-end people. But he would actually call it quits. It's interesting, he's not even quite, mid-20s, and he's achieved immense success. But then he literally walks away from it, thinking that he'd hit it, and he wants to move on to something new. And on the one hand, you could say, well, if it works, stick with it. But on the other hand, I get it. He scaled that mountain. No reason to stay at the top. And that also kind of gets to something that does seem apparent. And I've heard lots of things, even from different interviews with him, about his mental state. Is he autistic? Does he have Asperger's? Seemingly so. I would say he's definitely on the spectrum for something, but that's just kind of comparing habits, and that's kind of one of them, is a combination of needing new challenges, getting bored with just samey, but also autistic burnout's a real thing. So I'm not sure which of those two it could have been, or a combination of the both. But another element to some type of being on the spectrum is the need to work. Now, I think one of his earlier efforts was to open a kind of a small charter airline. He always liked aircraft. Yet another thing I really have always enjoyed since childhood as well. Ironically, me being blind, yada yada, I know. But anyway, I still like planes. Unlike me, though, who could never fly in a million years, he actually got his pilot's license. And not just that. Kind of, again, leaning into the autism thing. It became one of his supreme interests. And he pretty much obtained licenses over the years to fly everything. Single engine, twin engine, fixed wing, rotary. I don't know, probably a fucking blimp. It wouldn't shock me if he piloted one of Elon Musk's spaceships. The dude's goddamn impressive, if you ask me. Because he doesn't just talk about doing stuff, he actually does it. I mean, this guy had 4 hit records under his belt at the age most people are just graduating college and have nothing to do. And then, instead of letting it go to his head, he tried to walk away. And then he did something completely different. From what I remember, he's always kind of like planes, growing up near an airport, so, it's a thing. But, but he wouldn't stay away from music for long, because obviously he has more albums to go. Unfortunately, the 80s were kind of hard on a lot of musicians. He had some good songs, but there was kind of a bit of a spiral. Here's a sample from the 80s. Unfortunately, his success early on was a downhill spiral at this point. Interestingly, with a lot of musicians, they get into drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. I'm not saying he was a clean liver, but that does not seem to have been his weakness. I think trying to find something that he enjoyed and trying to please himself was more the problem. And for a time, it seems like he was trying to please others, make something that was popular, try to connect with the new generation. He's getting into his 30s now and all that. And he continues to release albums throughout the 80s, a lot of them, in fact. And there are good songs in there, but there's also some that you can tell were kind of made to be radio hits, or at least sort of. And it's almost like he was ashamed of his own uniqueness sometimes, leaning away from the synthesizers and his voice that I frankly adore. Probably also explains why I love Smashing Pumpkins, huh? I'm weird. I know that. You probably don't realize it yet. I probably seem quite normal and well-adjusted for what I am now. I was never an angry kid, but I was far too aware of the world for my age, let's put it like that, which could lead to depressions and dark moods and honestly just kind of calling out bullshit as I saw it. Anyway, all of this culminated in 1992 with Metal Plus Soul, the album. And there are several tracks I could sample off of that to kind of show you the level it had reached. In the end, I picked this one, but you can really go through, say, Amazon and listen to clips and pick one for yourself. But this is where he was at in 1992.
As you walk in, I woke up. I've never seen a pretty girl look so tough, baby. You got that look.
Yeah. Now, there are still some good songs on that album. And this is about the time I discovered him. And so I originally kind of found him for the older work, Down in the Park, like I said, Wires, as we already played. And so I kind of, at that time, it was pre-internet. Or at least very, very early internet. So I was buying whatever I could get in shops or get imported. Back then, if you got albums overseas, you had to go to your shop and kind of ask them to order it in for you, and it may or may not come. I was also into quite a bit of European trance and industrial later on, and getting those records was hit or miss, to say the least, pre-internet. And this is also pre-MP3. So we're vinyl records or CDs. I never did cassette tapes. The fact that the player could eat them always bugged me. Plus, I never liked the background noise of cassette tapes. For some reason, the background noise of a vinyl never bugged me. But I loved CDs when they came out. And think about a CD, if you took care of it, they're very durable. A record, you could play it out, just the needle. And of course, in the early 90s, CDs were the rage and record stuff was hard to get. Of course, it's kind of come back into vogue in the 21st century, but I digress. So I discovered him, and I'm like, what the... Okay, the early stuff's good, but what's going on with the newer stuff? Okay. Well, then 1994 happened, and a new album dropped.
Listen to my voice.
That was the beginning of the album. It's called Sacrifice. You might notice a little bit of a tonal shift from Metal Plus Soul. It's amazingly different. It's like the man went through a mental breakdown in the best possible way. It's like he returned to his early stuff, the angst and the sci-fi and the irreverence, but with maturity. Because he would have been at that time only slightly younger than I am now. And I get it. I can think about music I would have made in my early 20s versus early 40s. And yeah, here's a little more.
You sing to my soul. You play with my heart. You breathe.
So why the change or sacrifice? I'd say 2. He got married and he met Trent Reznor. And it shows on both sides in a very, very good way. And this is when his fortunes start to turn around again. And he's about to do something twice in his life that most people only dream of doing once. Becoming a pop star, or at least popular. 1997, it's followed up by Exile. Quite possibly one of my most favorite albums of all time. Here's a clip.
In my darkness, I hear the voice of evil. This is love angels. This is
That thing is dark, which is exactly what I needed at that age, a young adult. We also seem to hold a lot of opinions on religion. You probably wouldn't like my opinions on religion. But anyway, it is really ramping up from this point. Next, around 2000, we have the album Pure. And it continues. It has his new sound, but it's not monotone. There are plenty of upbeat songs on these albums, as well as plenty introspective songs. Here's a bit from Pure.
some tears. I wish I had believed in your heaven. One perfect life led by blind faith and trust.
Yeah, it was the right place at the right time for me. Again, it kind of went in with 9 Inch Nails. I will admit, that was the kind of music I was into, still like today, frankly. I was never into something real heavy like Marilyn Manson or any of the edgelord stuff. That seemed kind of silly to me, frankly. Again, I was actually quite a serious kid. And already by this point in my life, I'd seen shit. It kind of makes me laugh at other videos and people call me a normie. If only. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my life has been anything but normal. And I've seen things, been through things. Well, music helped a lot. And yeah, when I was in the right mood, something like Gary Numan hit right because it's sincere. It's not artificial. It's not plastic. It's not put on for the masses. It's not an act. You know, a lot of the bands in the 80s and 90s, it was a stage act, and that's fine. That's fine. They were entertainers. They entertained. Gary Numan was different. He tried being a bit of an act and entertainer, and it didn't work. So, beginning with Sacrifice, he just started doing whatever the fuck he wanted. And while it never would get him to superstardom, it really found the new fan base for him with a whole new generation, with me, and probably younger than me, because it spoke to us. So here's someone who has lived experience. He grew up blue collar. He overcame a disability of some kind and succeeded through work and made very unique music that influenced a whole generation of musicians as well. And he's so unknown in America. I remember looking for him in stores, and it would almost always skip from whatever to Randy Newman. It used to frustrate the hell out of me. But I did start to see more and more of his records appearing in the early 21st century. And while he was making new music, he made a couple of albums revisiting old music. You know, remixing it, redoing it. In fact, here is one of the update versions. There's a couple albums. There's New Dream for Old, which is, I think, 98's when that came out, 98, 99. And then there was Hybrid, which I believe was 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. Either way, here's an update of Down in the Park from that period. And yeah, different mood.
Down in the park where the Macmen made the machines that play go by numbers. Down in the park where the friend of five.
It's interesting to see the same artists remix and revisit and kind of reinvent their own work. Other people do it too, but it's particularly interesting. And at this point, yeah, I'm a solid fan. I'm pre-ordering albums before they come out. I remember I kind of looked at my collection. This would have been late 90s maybe, when the internet was young but still around. And I could not get several of his albums, especially some of the low ones from the 80s. But I wanted a complete set. I'm a collector. You might have noticed. So I went to his website. No one in the U.S. had them. No store could even order them. And so I went onto the website and ordered the albums that I didn't have. I think some of them had only recently been released on CD. Anyway. And I waited. They shipped from the UK. And got them in, and I was so excited. I got them in college, and I must have fallen asleep listening to those for a whole semester. Different ones. I think the original Two Boy Army was in there because for some reason I didn't get it then. Maybe it was out of print. Maybe I sat and found it. I remember I had replicas. But anyway. But then I also had some of the 80s stuff. That Metal Plus Soul was from there. Before I had just kind of heard it. And there was a re-release on CD, I think, that had more tracks. I know there was an earlier release and then a later one, and I wanted it on CD before. I didn't have it. Anywho, when I got the package in, back then international shipping took a while, there was a thank you note. And I thought that was really nice. Because back then, he wasn't, I mean, people knew him, but he was kind of one of the best kept secrets. You know, I'm sure it's something you do when you order from anywhere, anytime. But it was nice to get a thank you note. I'd like to think in my head that he realized, or someone realized, that some weird young American had found and was really being inspired by, moved by his music. Don't know. So yeah, he was redoing tracks. And there's this one. Oh yes, he did it.
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock all my doors, and it's the only way to live in cars. Here in my car, I can.
A heavy, almost dark goth version of Cars. I love it. One of the most poppy songs, and probably the one song of his that really was known in America in the 80s. I love that. I think that one was from the Hybrid album. I have legitimately bought all of these. In fact, I still have them all. Even though, of course, long ago I copied them over to my computer for convenience's sake. Yeah. And he keeps making music into the 21st century. In 2006, Jagged came out. And it's a good album. And looking through the tracks just to play one, since this one was entitled Blind, I had to do it. So yeah, here's one of his, well, not newer songs. It's 15 years old now. But to me it seems new considering the old stuff.
Like a blind man falling, scared out, and I'm still falling from grace.
So there we go. We'll see how these music clip things work. When I started this video, I was just going to do 3, but I couldn't do that. Now, there are several more albums to come from him, not to mention lives that I've got, interesting B-sides. Again, I'm a collector, but I also listen to it. If you're interested, we can do a second one, but I didn't want to cover too much, and this is kind of the era that really got me into him, but I would still follow him. In fact, what inspired me to do this video, I haven't bought many CDs recently. Part of it is you don't buy CDs much anymore because it's 2023. But I'm the weirdo that still does. And I had not really checked in to see what Gary Numan had been up to in a few years. And yeah, I missed, I think, 2 albums from him. Intruder, I definitely just picked up and have been listening to it. Splinter. I was thinking, I kept wanting to say Strangers. Yeah, it's Splinter, Strange Mind. So that's another one I missed. I probably just kind of flew under the radar because these are, we don't really have record stores here anymore. I used to go to local stores and pick them up. Didn't even actually buy many albums online. And when Amazon came around, that helped. Anywho, I will also say that I got my cousin, Fox, into Gary Numan. And a few other people around me too. Pretty much people who hung out with me ended up hearing my music. And I think they always found that interesting because I wasn't listening to the same stuff most of the people were. I'm not saying they liked everything I had, probably far from it. I mean, I own the complete Syd Barrett collection. In fact, whenever we wanted to make people laugh at frat parties back in the day, we bring out the effervescing elephant. Of course, on the other hand, when we wanted people to leave parties, I also had this album of songs by Leonard Nimoy. Oh yes, if you blast Bilbo Baggins on repeat, people will fucking leave. But yeah, now music was very important to me then. And I like introspective, mature music. I also like fun. I'm sure we'll get to some. I mean, if this video is popular, we'll do that. But I really want to give credit to Gary Numan. He is criminally underappreciated, but I think that's how he likes it. He's making music that he wants, not that's popular, and I completely identify with that. That's how I've run my YouTube channel for 12 years over there. I know how to make videos that would get huge views. I don't want to. I want to do what makes me happy. And that's what he does. By the way, he never gave up on his pilots thing. In fact, only in the last few years, I think he finally closed his air company when he moved to the U.S. I don't remember exactly. Again, I'm just sitting out on my swing. I don't have notes or anything. But I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe now, they moved to the USA and lives out in California. I actually sent a message to Fox a while back saying, Gary Numan lives in California, road trip, and he said, let's do it. So we jokingly, not so jokingly, said one day we'll just drive out there. we won't do that. That would be weird. Because but no, there aren't a ton of people that I actually admire, all in all, and would actually like to meet. He's probably one of them. Again, he didn't fall into drugs and alcohol to any extent. He's only been married once. Actually seems to really love his wife and kids, something I very much respect. And just loves to work and loves music. Also, he plays a beautiful piano, and I fucking love piano. I love strings. As much as some of my music is heavy metal, I really love like violin, cello. And I don't play a lick of music. I'm just an appreciator, and that's okay. My wife plays piano. But, I have had a lot of fun with it over the years. And I will say that his last couple albums have started charting again. That's what I mean. I don't think he'll ever have a number one album. I mean, that's hard for anyone to do in 2023 with the way things have changed. But he's making albums that are on the charts pretty high. That's pretty cool. And he's doing it his way. And he's 65 years old. And, Intruder there that he released just a couple of years ago, it still sounds really good and fresh. I think he's still doing the sci-fi dystopian thing, which is cool. But I think he's also kind of doing an environmental thing, which, I completely agree with. We can argue about climate change, but I think anyone who thinks it's okay to trash the earth just to leave litter and shit everywhere is a complete asshole. I mean, even if everything else aside, there's no reason to pollute and throw your beer cans and all that. It's just gross. I wouldn't even want to do that at my own house, much less outdoors. And I say this as someone who likes going outdoors with his family a lot and, hiking and ATV. They won't let me drive the ATVs though, but yeah. And that's what he's getting into. And also, for animals. He's a big advocate for, not killing off species that have every right to live like we do. I'm kind of down with that. I love animals. You've seen my cats, my dogs. The idea of killing a creature that we should be protecting is gross to me. And if you don't agree, you're fucking wrong. You just are. And yeah. Yeah, so for once, kind of looking into someone, I wouldn't call him a hero. I don't really have heroes. That's not how my brain is wired. But someone that I do consider inspirational looking into his life is not upsetting. Of course he's had challenges. Of course he's had failures. He's human. Well, maybe. There could be arguments made that Gary Numan is actually an alien doing a pretty good job of imitating a human. Cool. I'm down for that. I like that though. He's him. He doesn't really, in some ways, give a fuck, and I like that a lot. It's made some good music, and not everything he's made is great, of course. But heck, with 24 albums and hundreds of songs, maybe probably thousands by now that he's made, there's going to be a few duds, but mostly all great. And I wish him a long life. I've already lost David Bowie. Whew, I don't need to lose him yet, too. But, yeah, we'll see how this first music video goes down. And we'll see how YouTube reacts and gets copyright struck or not. But, I don't know. Check out Gary Numan if you don't know who he is. Man deserves a lot of credit. Really does. And he really inspired probably a lot of the bands that came later, too. So I'm debating who to do next. Again, David Bowie's an obvious choice. And, I do like some of the mainstream bands. Like I mentioned Pink Floyd. I like Led Zeppelin. When I was really young, I really loved The Doors. That might sound weird. I still do like The Doors, but, that was one of my earlier kind of fascinations. But then there are a lot of weird, obscure bands that I'm totally into that a lot of people just go, oh, they made that one song on the radio. It was kind of pop. A good example, Better Than Ezra. I love Better Than Ezra. And most people don't even know who they are. They know like 2 songs. But their first couple of albums were awesome. And believe it or not, Jimmy Eat World, if you know who they are, before they did The Middle and all that, they had a career where they were kind of a weird alt emo pop thing. So yeah, there's just some strange stuff in my collection that I could talk about. I never was much into punk, I will say that. I've got a little bit of punk, but not much. I never did a whole lot with rap. I'm not dogging on anyone is. I actually really respect the skills that rap requires to do. That is, especially just, freestyle. My God, that is some brain and mouth skills right there. But not for me. And the same goes for country. I like older country. But newer stuff, since like mid 80s, not really my thing. Yeah. But then there's some outliers, like I love Johnny Cash. I love Willie Nelson. So there's always exceptions, so you never know what I might pull out of my thing. Well. But, this is the flagship. Let me know how it works. And kind of give me an idea, maybe who next. Maybe I'll go for something obvious. Maybe I'll go for something off the wall. Let me know. Anyway, this is Misha. And catch you very soon next time.